Hello there, legends. This is a quick beginner's guide on anybody new to the game and what you can expect to find from certain countries and certain ship classes. Your ship classes are destroyers, cruisers, and battleships currently for this foreseeable future. There's only 7 tiers of ships, unlike the PC version, which goes up to 10. I will give a brief rundown on what the pros and cons are to each country. I won't go too in depth into Germany because they're quite new. I've not played any of the battleships. But yeah, I'll start off with the Americans. I'm going to probably sort of talk around the tier 3, tier 4 and up. Tiers 1s and 2s, none of the countries really give you a idea of what to expect further down the line because they play a little bit differently and they come into their own around tier 4, tier 5. When you are starting off, you will be given a tier 1 cruiser for each country. Albany for America, Chikuma for Japan, Weymouth for UK, and Dresden for Germany. The different ship types: destroyers, small, quick, agile, good concealment, torpedoes, guns, obviously for your main armament, your guns. There's different shell types, as in HE and AP, for all countries and ships. The cruisers, they're middle of the road. They're quite good to get started on because they're quite beginner friendly. Average speed, average maneuverability. Some have torpedoes, some don't. Some have really good guns, some don't. Battleships, as you probably are aware, are your big HP pool, big guns, slow moving, slow turning. A destroyer's favourite target usually, as long as it can get in there and out without being spotted, and there's no cruisers around to keep that battleship safe from incoming destroyers. So I'll quickly go through the pros and cons of each country and ship class. The Americans are more of a gunboat compared to the Japanese destroyers, which are torpedo boats, and by this I mean their guns are very, very good. The best guns that a destroyer could get in this game. So far that I think they're still better than Germans, but like I said, I'm not going to get into the Germans too much. I haven't played them enough really. The torpedoes are short range. Their concealment tends not to be as good as the Japanese counterparts. So you will be relying on your guns and hit and run tactics. If you're in close range with your torpedoes, expect to be spotted, but you can get those torpedoes off, and used correctly it can be pretty lethal. I know a lot of people in American destroyers that do better than me, and I prefer my Japanese destroyers to stay concealed. The cruisers, Omaha is a bit of a highlight until the Konigsberg come along for the Germans. It was probably the best tier 4 cruiser. Now the Konigsberg at tier 4 for the Germans, I would say, is better in my opinion. The New Orleans is a highlight as well. Pensacola, you'll probably find that's a bit of a hard grind. It's a bit of a citadel magnet. We will go into citadels on another video. It also doesn't have any torpedoes from tier 5 and up. So Omaha is your last ship that will have torpedoes on your cruiser. You'll find some cruisers will have torpedoes. All destroyers will have torpedoes. Very few battleships will have torpedoes. The German battleships, some of them have torpedoes, and the new premium for Japan at tier 5 has torpedoes, I believe. So get good with your guns for Americans. That's a lot of what they rely on, is their main armament. The battleships, slow turning, good guns, can be inaccurate. Bit of RNG is a big part of this game in regards to any ship or country you play. You will be able to better your playstyle with commanders, which we will go into on another video. You can use a commander which will benefit you for longer range engagements in a battleship, or you can use a a commander which will benefit you at close range engagements. Personally, I prefer close range engagements on all of my battleships and countries. I'm not going to say that is correct. Some battleships do excel at sniping. I just prefer to get a little bit in closer to support my destroyers and cruisers in my divisions. So I play a lot of secondary builds with survivability builds, so I can absorb as much damage as possible while they're dishing it out. That's just my playstyle. So that's about it for the Americans. The New Mexico is probably highlight for that line. It's a very good tier 5 battleship. Very good. You will be playing that battleship a lot, I would have thought. The Japanese torpedo boats for destroyers. They are pretty weak guns until you get to up to about the Fubuki. You still will not want to use your guns unless you really have to, or you're being well supported. The torpedoes are definitely your best weapon, and when you get to the Fubuki and up, you get some long-range torpedoes that can be upgraded to 10 kilometers. Your concealment is very good, so you could fire torpedoes from cover, and you will not get spotted if you fire torpedoes by other enemy ships. So it's more of a sneaky, stealthy sort of gameplay. The Japanese destroyers are my favourite destroyers, probably, very closely followed by the British. The Japanese cruisers comes into its own around the third attack, I would say. The Aoba, for example, has 10-kilometer torpedoes on it. Don't expect to be a torpedo boat. They're more of an extra. You're not going to be going around torpedoing all game because it takes a while to reload, and they don't have as many as the destroyers. The cruisers are good for the Japanese at setting things on fire with your HE shells. You don't want to be in too close a range to other ships. You want to sort of stay on the fringes, use the islands as cover, and try and set things on fire. You can still use the AP on them, but it's more of a damage over time effect with the high explosives, and don't get hit very often. Any cruiser, if you're side onto any other ship, you will get citadeled, especially at certain ranges. Just keep good map awareness. The battleships for Japan I find play quite similar to the Americans. I think I prefer the Japanese to the Americans on certain tiers. The Fuso and the New Mexico are both amazing tier 5 battleships. The Fuso is the highlight for the Japanese battleships. The Gato I found was a step down, wasn't so enjoyable to play and harder to play. The Amagi I've not long had, but so far I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, just give them a try. British destroyers are sort of a halfway between the American and Japanese. They have good torpedoes, which start around Icarus for the longer range, and average to good guns as well. You're more of a jack of all trades compared to the other two countries, and you can hold your own in a gunfight, and you could have got some nice torpedoes as well to go with it. I'm not going to go into the British cruisers because you will be past those quite soon, just to get to the other two lines, because they haven't brought out the full line yet for the cruisers. The British battleships are probably my favourite, not biased at all, it's just they suit my playstyle with regards to close range quarters. They're quite manoeuvrable, so when I'm in and about and there's destroyers dropping torpedoes, I can turn a bit easier to get out of the way of them. I find their secondaries are quite good, and at the right angle you can ricochet a lot of shots. Any ship that's broadside, you're broadside to an enemy, you will get citadeled at certain ranges, even at maximum range on some of the battleships or cruisers if you hit the sweet spot. The highlight for me is the King George. It's a HE spammer really. You'll be very rarely using AP in this unless you're close quarters and you're side on to another battleship. The other battleships apart from the King George are more situational on what you should pick regards to shell type. Germans I'm not going to go into much depth over. I've not played any of the battleships. They are good from what I understand. I can't wait to get them because I think they're suit my playstyle. The German destroyers are very similar to the British, I would say, quite middle of the road with torpedoes and guns. The Gay is a bit of a highlight because you get cruiser guns once upgraded, so they can do some big damage. The cruisers, I would say, is the best line for cruisers out of all the countries. Konigsberg is a definite highlight, very powerful ship, and if used correctly you can do a lot of hurt to any other class in the game, destroyer, cruiser or battleship. Nuremberg is quite similar, slight upgrade in weapons and armour, not quite so good gun angles, and the York is then classed as a heavy cruiser, which means it's got heavier guns compared to Nuremberg and Konigsberg, but the hull is still the same as a light cruiser, so don't expect to be going in like a battleship and you'll be wiped out quite quickly. I'm probably going to leave that there because I don't want to drag this video on too much, but that's just a quick beginner's guide to what to expect from certain countries. There's no best country, there is no best ship to play. It's all down to personal preference, what you like to play. Give them all a try, and just have fun really. They've all got strengths and weaknesses, and there are definitely highlights to certain lines, and there are definitely ships that aren't quite as good in that line, and you will be glad to get past it onto the next ship. So there is no good or best ship in this game. Just play the game, enjoy it, and see what sort of playstyle and country and class of ship suits you. So yeah, hopefully catch you again on the next video, and have a good day. See you out there on the seas.